Hello, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, as we said. Hi, my name is Gwen Stembridge. I am the Director of Education and Partnerships at Nonprofit Vote. And you're here for our webinar, how to talk about the value of voting, connecting to everyday life. This is the first webinar in our series of the year. So welcome to this. There are some of you who I know have joined us for years and years, and then there are some of you who might be new to this. You might have learned about this through our friends at the Right Question Institute or any other organization that you follow. So either way, however you got here, we're glad that you're here. A couple of just announcements and housekeeping I'd like to cover. Please do put any questions that you may have in the Q&A box. There's a black bar at the bottom of your screen or your device that should have a button that says Q&A. So please do any questions that you have. We will have a question and answer session at the end. And so please add your questions there. If you put them in the chat, it's going to be really difficult for us to find them. So if you put them in the Q&A section, it really helps us on the back end to stay organized so we can get to as many questions as possible. The other thing to let you know about is the React button. There's a little heart also in that same toolbar. And if you are really excited about something that one of our speakers is saying, please use those reactions. It's a great way for us to know what is resonating, if you're feeling like, oh, I've been in the same boat, or this is really relevant to me, it's really great to see and hear that. And then the chat is there for introductions, for comments, and sharing of resources. I know our presenters today will be using the chat. They'll be asking you some questions that they'll want you to answer in the chat. So please do pay attention to that as well. As with all of our webinars, a recording of the webinar will be sent out afterward within a week to everyone who registered, whether or not they attended. And then also closed captioning is available via Zoom. So I want to make sure everybody knows what resources are available to you. And if at any point you have issues, please reach out. Wanted to also just address some of the things that have been happening in the world in the past few weeks. By now, I'm sure many of you are aware of the most recent shooting deaths at the hands of American federal forces in the past few weeks. In addition to the two people who have received the most media attention, there are many more people who have died in federal custody. Nonprofit Vote exists because our American democracy is rooted in shared power and trust with our elected government. And then when we see acts of violence and killing of American people, citizens and non-citizens by government forces, that trust is broken down and our democracy is weakened. In honor of the lives lost and of those who are still facing violence, we invite you to participate in actions that strengthen and repair our democracy in any ways that you can. You can connect with your community by reaching out to a neighbor, a friend, or a family member. You can seek out trusted resources like your local or state nonprofit partners or community groups for suggested policy actions around this issue. And you can talk with those around you about voting and civic engagement. As you can see from our webinar topic today, we know that even though it may not be instant, voting can have powerful impact over time, especially when lots of people show up consistently. And so the team at Nonprofit Vote is here to support you in building a powerful, civically engaged community. And we're grateful to everyone here for being a partner in that. So this is our agenda for the day. Wanted to tell you a little bit about Nonprofit Vote. I'll introduce our speakers and then pass the floor on to them. As I said, we will have some time for an audience Q&A. And then as I share, I come from a community organizing background and cannot leave you all without a call to action. And then we'll wrap up our time and share out a whole bunch of resources I know that there is going to be really robust conversation today, and if we could extend this to many, many hours, I'm sure we would have lots of conversation opportunities. We're sticking with an hour for today, but we'll make sure that we're sending you with lots of resources that you can use after we part today. So wanted to give you a little bit of info about Nonprofit Vote. We're actually celebrating in 2026 our 20th anniversary. Nonprofit Vote has been supporting nonprofits in doing civic engagement for 20 years. And our mission is really just about equipping you all. Yes, thank you, all the celebrations. Yes, yes, yes. Our mission is really about equipping you all as nonprofit leaders with the tools that you need to do civic engagement and engage your communities in voting. And that's all about making a more inclusive democracy in general. We know that when all voices are heard, we have a more representative democracy, we have a more equitable democracy, and it is really better for us all. If you'd like to read a little bit more about our work, we have our biennial report that is here, and I'll ask my colleague Sugalema to share that in the chat at some point as well. But if you want to learn more there, that's where you'll do that. All right, so here's where we get to our speakers. These are longtime partners of Nonprofit Vote, and so it's really a pleasure to get to bring them onto our webinar platform today. We've got Naomi Campbell, who's the director of the Empowerment Program at the Right Question Institute, her colleague Kayla Alvarez, who's a program associate with the Empowerment Program as well. And then we have one of our longtime field program partners, Monica DeWitt, who's the education specialist at Community Resource Center in Denver, Colorado. So a great group of speakers today, really knowledgeable. The Right Question Institute is really a wonderful partner in helping us talk to voters. And this is one of the most requested webinar topics we have received. How do you talk to voters, especially in these days with everything happening in our world? How do we have those conversations when voting seems really disconnected from our everyday life and what's right in front of us? But Naomi and the team are going to help us make some of those connections and give us the tools to do that. I'm gonna pass it on now to Naomi.
Thank you so much, Gwen. Welcome, everybody. My name is Naomi Campbell. I'm the Empowerment Program Director at the Right Question Institute. And my role is to provide training and support to people who work in a variety of different fields who use our strategies and tools and resources. So everything from legal aid to social services to voter engagement organizations. My background is actually as a lawyer, but my colleague Kayla and I do work in many different fields. And we're excited to be here today. So to kick us off, so just a kind of big picture overview of what we're going to be presenting on today. We're going to be introducing a new model for engaging voters in conversations about the value of voting. And essentially our strategy takes the approach of how to talk about the value of voting. You get them to articulate the value of voting for themselves. So we'll be introducing two tools that are nonpartisan. They're simple to help people make the connection both between the services that are important to them or the issues that are important to them and voting. We'll talk about how people on the front lines of services in low-income communities can play a role in getting more people to vote. I know many of you are here with the League of Women Voters and in different spaces with explicitly voter engagement organizations, but also how do people who are providing direct services, who are in nonprofits, how are they able to do voter engagement in their work? And then how voter engagement efforts can also integrate the tools into their work. So we'll touch on both of those things a little bit. So we already have been kind of doing this, but if you want to continue to share in the chat your name, state, organization role, and then any thoughts about what you're doing to engage voters now. So some of you are doing a lot to engage voters. Some of you might be looking to find ways to engage voters. You haven't been doing that yet, but we'd love to just hear some things that you've been doing about how you've been engaging voters now. And we have more people introducing themselves. We've got people from all over, which is amazing. I see registering voters in high schools, people doing naturalization ceremonies, voter registration, presenting to people with disabilities about the importance of voting, looking for ways to do this in a very low voting state. That somebody said that. I'm gonna miss a lot of these because they're coming in really fast, but voter registrations at local events, tabling at community events, texting voters, registering high schoolers. Okay, so there's a lot of tabling at local places, but I also see people who are working in direct services. So I think I saw somebody who does work with foster youth, work in healthcare settings. Amazing. So we have a really wide range of what people are already doing to engage voters now. And hopefully what this webinar will give you is a sense of how to integrate something into your work that you're already doing and make it yours. So we want to really encourage people to take what they hear in this webinar, but then think about how you might integrate it, how it fits with your work, what you know about the people that you are working with, and how you can adapt it to the work that you do. Okay, there we go. So I believe after the webinar, I think that Nonprofit Vote has an evaluation that would be extremely helpful if you would take a minute to fill it out. We'll also be giving you links to the resources presented today, but also further resources. You can get support from Nonprofit Vote, and please stay in touch with whatever you're doing. We learned so much from the people on the ground who are using these tools, and they have played such an active role in shaping our resources. And so please let us know and please give us feedback on what you're doing on the ground. So the resources that I'll be talking about today, the first is called the Why Vote tool, and it's explicitly for helping engage voters in low-income communities around the services that are important to them and how they relate to voting. The second tool that we'll look at is called the Why Vote tool for youth, but essentially it's an adaptation of the tool that focuses more on issues, not on government services. And this was something that was requested we have a large audience of educators, and people were saying, well, I work with youth, I want to do youth engagement, but youth really care about issues more than services that are important to them. And so that is an adaptation of the tool that we'll talk about as well. And then there are other resources. There's a facilitation toolkit, there are local adaptations. So people have adapted this for local elections. We can talk a little bit about that if you're interested. And we also have a Why Vote lesson plan for those of you who are in high school classrooms. And so we'll be mostly focusing today on the Why Vote tool, but that will give you a sense of what the other resources look like. So I just wanted to give a little bit of background on the Right Question Institute. So we're a nonprofit organization, but we were founded many years ago when our co-founders were working in Lawrence, Massachusetts, and they were working on a dropout prevention program. And they were trying to engage parents, mostly immigrant parents who mostly not English speaking as their first language, and they were hoping that parents would go to the schools and advocate for their children. And what parents were saying to them was that we don't go to the school because we don't even know what questions to ask. And they heard that many, many times, and they thought, okay, great, we're just going to give you a script. We're going to give you the answer. We're going to say, this is what you need to say in the school. These are the questions you should be asking. And what they began to see was that the parents would start to rely on them more for advocacy. So they would say, okay, I use these questions, but what do I say in this situation? Or can you tell me, can you advocate for me in these other situations? And they realized it was really about building people's confidence and building people's belief in their ability to ask questions and have a voice in the decisions that affected them. And how do you teach these really fundamental skills? That is the reason for being for the Right Question Institute. And what we found through our work with those parents, but also with adult educators and different service providers, is that people took these resources that we had developed, this strategy we had developed, and used it in many different spaces. And so they were showing that these were universally relevant skills. And so we've done work in healthcare, in legal aid, as I mentioned, but also in the classroom. How do you help teach students to ask their own questions? That's been a large piece of our work. Essentially, the overlooked barrier that the parents named has been the focus of our work. And our expertise as a result has been looking at the design of methods that make effective participation possible for people whose voices are traditionally not heard in democratic spaces. And so we'll be able to talk a little bit about, what are the people, how do you persuade people who might be thinking a certain way about voting that they should be thinking a different way about voting? Our specialty really is in how do you help people who engage whose voices have not been heard, or that people who are hesitant or don't see the value in voting. So some examples of where these resources have been used, they've been integrated into classes in adult literacy programs in various states, including Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, Arizona, while people are waiting in line at a food bank in Denver. And we have Monica from the Community Resource Center today, who's going to talk a little bit more about work that they've done in Colorado. One of the people that was using our Why Vote resources did an adaptation of the tool to do outreach in Black communities in rural southern Georgia, was going into churches and using it as a template for conversations about issues that were important to people, and a network of public libraries in rural communities in Western New York State. So this is just to give you a sense of kind of how people have taken these tools and run with them in different directions. And we can talk more about any of those examples that might be of interest. But I want to get now to actually showing you what the Why Vote tool is. So this is the Why Vote tool. It's a double-sided resource and it comes in different formats, but I'll be breaking down each piece of this tool. And it is essentially a template for having a conversation about voting. So the first page of the tool has a range of different services that may be important to people and has people choosing the three most important services to them. So to take a look up close, there's housing. It might be Section 8, public housing, homeless services, shelters, income support. Those take various forms, including SNAP, EBT cards, Social Security, got healthcare, Medicaid or Medicare, disability services. There's got schools, you've got free lunch programs, special education services, jobs, job training, courts, reentry services, legal aid, family court, adult education, different services related to children and childcare, and different services related to neighborhoods, including public safety, parks, libraries. And so I want to ask now in the chat, which three services are most important to people that you work with or who live in your community? And if you didn't see a service that was on that list, you can add it. So please use the chat and just share, what do you think the people would say who you work with, what the three most important services to them are? So we've got things. Oh, we have a question. Will the tools be sent to us afterwards? Yes, we'll be sharing a link for that. Okay, so housing, healthcare, and food. There's a lot of housing that I see coming in. Transportation, affordable housing. Okay, a lot of housing, a lot of healthcare as well. And then I see some that were not on the list. So mental health supports, clean water or infrastructure in rural communities. And actually, the tool or the adaptation I mentioned for rural Georgia, some people were really concerned about hospital closures. So hospital closures was one thing that they added to the list. Okay, so we have a real range here. And the many services that I just put up on screen, as you all are aware, we are working in a very fast changing landscape, and these services are changing, and a lot of people are experiencing uncertainty about what is going to happen. So this allows people to think, what are they prioritizing? What are they saying, this is the most important to me? The next piece of the Why Vote tool, this is page 2, and we'll break it down into parts. We give a very small piece of information about voting. So it says elected officials make decisions that affect all these services. And by voting, you can have a say in who makes those decisions. So I'm curious to know, why would it be important for people to see the connection between the services they receive and decisions elected officials make? And you can use the chat here. It might take a minute because this is a longer question. But I see somebody says the value of voting. It makes voting personal to each person, personal impact that makes the connection real for them. They can see how issues are directly impacted to hold officials responsible. It creates motivation. That's great. Who you elect dictates the effectiveness, keeping people engaged. And that's right. Often, this connection between services people receive and decisions that elected officials make is obscure to people. People don't see what is happening in the legislature as connected to their daily experiences with services or with government institutions. And people don't connect that micro level to what is happening at the micro level, at the macro level. So it's showing people, it's giving people just a very small amount of information, which is that these services and decisions are connected. So the next piece of the Why Vote tool is giving people space to articulate why would you want to vote and have a say in who is making decisions about those services. So this is the piece where it allows people to name for themselves the value of voting, which helps develop a sense of urgency to participate and vote. And it is a nonpartisan strategy, which is a requirement for a lot of people who are trying to do voter engagement. So it encourages people to vote, but it's not encouraging people to vote for a specific candidate. Instead, it's making the connection between services and voting clear. So this, if you're using it as a conversation, you can just ask this question. If you're using it as a template, you can have people jot down notes here. The next piece is asking, what questions do you have about being able to vote in the next election? Ask as many questions as you can. So the next question I have for you all is, what questions do you think people might have about actually voting? Ask as many questions as you can. These can be questions you've heard or questions that you think people might have. Will it make any difference? Will my vote count? Who do I vote for? When is election day? How do I sign up? Do I need an ID? We've got a lot of repeat questions here. Am I eligible? How do I know who to vote for? I saw, is my vote private? Can I go if I don't have a license? How do I get information about the candidates? So the intention in this space is to give space for people to ask questions and also identify obstacles to voting. And what we've seen in our work across lots of different fields is when people are asking a question, they're more motivated to find the answer, especially when it's a question that they have been asking. Some questions that we've heard when in our work in voter engagement: can I bring my kids with me? What if I don't know what to do? Can I get help? What if I make a mistake? And will I get punished? And I think there's a lot of questions around, who do I vote for? How do I get information? How do I register? I think some of these questions that we've heard also show that people's experiences with government institutions have not always been positive. And so there's a lot of fear around engaging in yet another process with a government institution. So their experiences maybe at the welfare office where they've been punished for filling out a form wrong is replicated in these other spaces. And so this is giving people an opportunity to express those barriers, to express those fears, and then become motivated to find the answers. The last question that we ask of people is what did you learn? And reflecting is an interesting step because it allows people to take a step back and think about their thinking. What did they learn from going through this process? And it allows them to concretize it more and take it with them. And so this is a key step in the process that we found in our work is to ask people to reflect. The very final piece of the last page of the tool is for more information about voting, you can visit vote.gov. Other people have replaced this with, a local person who can help register people to vote. You can also find where to vote by searching online, find my polling place. So this is also adaptable depending on the situation that you're in or which election you're trying to engage people around. So I'm curious to know, and I'll leave this question, or Kayla, if you wouldn't mind putting this question in the chat, we'll review your responses after I go through the next piece. So, what thoughts do you have on the Why Vote tool? Would love to hear any reflections you have about the tool that we just presented. So, what thoughts do you have on the Why Vote tool? I'll leave that question for you to answer. And in the meantime, I'll talk a little bit about the changes that we've seen in people when they name for themselves the value of voting. One thing that we've seen is the changes in what people know, changes in how people feel, and changes in what people do. So just to give you examples of those changes, changes in what people know or cognitive changes. This is Angie in New Hampshire, and she said, it's at the welfare office that we learn our voice doesn't count. But after this, I see that our voices do count and we need to vote. So people are learning something new, that their voices count. I see that if I don't vote, then other people are going to keep on making decisions for me. This gives me a chance to have a say in who's going to be making those decisions. This was an adult learner in Indiana. Some affective changes are changes in how people feel. Somebody wrote, I have never voted. I feel really strong about voting now. It would make a difference. It made me feel that voting is very important so that your voice can be heard. And then finally, examples in changes in what people are able to do. I think it is really important to do the right of vote, and I will vote for the next presidential election. And this is from an adult education teacher in Pennsylvania. I don't think I've ever had a student who has voted before. After doing the workshop, many students actually voted. They came back really proud. They went to the county elections and voted for the school board. It actually makes a difference. So those are kind of different categories of changes that we see when people are starting to formulate questions about voting and about and articulating for themselves what the value of voting is. I see a lot of things that have come in the chat, and I'm going to review these. This is really exciting to see people's reflections, and would love to see questions as well. Some people are saying, it's fairly simple and straightforward, and yes, that is absolutely the idea. We want something that can be simple and used in the context that you're working in and adapted for any of those contexts. So glad to see that. So I'm not going to go through this tool in detail, but this is the Why Vote tool for youth, which essentially has the same format as the Why Vote tool, except that it is framed around issue areas. Oops. So on page 1, people can review a range of issues and prioritize the issues that are most important to them. So just some examples here, criminal justice, education, jobs and economy, environment, health, and other people can write in an issue that is most important to them. And then it has them go through the same process of connecting their vote with the issue, the decisions that elected officials make with voting, and getting an opportunity to ask questions about voting. So I want to leave another question here. I'm curious to hear from you all. What are ways that you could use these tools as a part of your work? So how could you use these tools as a part of your work? And I'll be reviewing these and responding to some of your comments. There's a lot of people commenting, so if I don't get to you, I apologize. But while you're thinking about that, how you're thinking about how you could use these tools as a part of your work, I want to turn it over to Monica DeWitt. We have done work with the Community Resource Center, and they've taken tools from Nonprofit Vote, from the Right Question Institute, and used it in their work engaging voters. And so it's much better for us to hear from Monica than to hear from me talking, because she's done this work on the ground. So I want to pass it over to you, Monica, and thank you so much for being here.
Yes, thank you, Naomi, and thank you, Gwen, for inviting us. My name is Monica DeWitt, she, her pronouns. I'm with Community Resource Center here in Colorado. We serve statewide, but many of our partners are in the Denver metro region. And we're grateful to Nonprofit Vote for introducing us to the Right Question Institute and the Why Vote tool, and just excited for the opportunity to share how we've used it with our nonprofit partners. A little bit about Community Resource Center and our unique model before I dive in. We are a capacity building organization, so we support human service nonprofits throughout Colorado and community groups, including libraries and policy organizations. Again, across Colorado, civic engagement and voter engagement are core parts of the work that we do because we know that nonprofits are deeply embedded in their communities and are often the most trusted messengers for this important message about voting and our democracy. Direct service partners serve people who are frequently left out of our traditional voter outreach. So, we're targeting low-income families, immigrants, refugees, the newcomer community, people experiencing homelessness, oftentimes first-time voters of all ages. And rather than telling people why they should vote, many of you are addressing this in the Q&A already. Community Resource Center's model centers on helping nonprofits create space for people to explore their own motivations, questions, concerns about how to be involved civically. Especially on issue areas and ballot measures that relate to their missions and the lives of the participants that they're serving. Therefore, the Why Vote tool really fits in, resonates with us because it's visual, it's accessible, and it's rooted in curiosity rather than persuasion. So instead of going in and saying, you should vote and here's why, it shifts that voter engagement conversation from being information giving to being people centered. So we've seen how effective it is for participants who face language barriers as well, who are new to voting or who feel disconnected from politics in general. The icons that Naomi shared in the tool and the issue areas really make it easy to start that nonpartisan conversation and starting with those super simple questions. What matters to you? It's not even using the word voting. I'm not even using civics. I'm not using any of those buzzwords that turn people off. Just what matters to you. And then you can follow up with what questions do you have about voting? So at CRC, we've used the Why Vote tool in a variety of ways. I've included some pictures here on the slide to help you visualize some of those ways. Probably feeling a little small on your screen, but hopefully that helps. One way is that we've provided laminated versions for our voter organizers. And I know Naomi will be sharing the actual tool itself for you all to see and print and laminate if that feels right. And it's really been a conversation starter for our organizers during outreach. Partner sites are nonprofits who've requested physical materials, also use copies of the Why Vote tools at events or in their lobbies or in their offices. And again, addressing a question that's coming up in the Q&A, our direct service nonprofits find time to chat with folks while they're in line. That's been their biggest success. People are waiting in a long line for food delivery, or they're waiting in line to waiting to have a meeting with their case manager. And that's opportunities to say, hey, how's it going? What matters to you? Have you thought about voting in this election, or what experience do you have with voting? They also use the tool at registration tables during case management services. And our nonprofit partners have emphasized that it takes repeated conversations. The whole conversation often doesn't happen at the same time. It's not always this clean from start to finish. And having a volunteer or a staff member who's the go-to person, who's trusted, a consistent presence within your service delivery can be a really powerful way to show up for folks who are curious and interested and might just need a little extra support and handholding. Other ways we've used the Why Vote tools, we've used postcards and stickers to make the tool more interactive. Kids especially love the stickers, and it's created a nice entry point for family conversations about voting. We've made large posters with the Why Vote categories and invited community members to place stickers next to the reason they vote. So it creates a large visualization of shared priorities and a spark dialogue. We use this at a community event in Denver, and it was really neat to see just like this really long line in this one category and people feeling like they were part of community, like, hey, I'm not alone in caring about that issue area. We've incorporated the tool in our voter engagement trainings, so with nonprofit professionals, and we've received requests for deeper trainings on how nonprofits can adapt the tool to do their own outreach. Examples of issue area outreach that we've done. For example, when someone has selected education as a reason why they vote, it's opened the door to discussing how community priorities have show up in a very practical way on the ballot. So last year, Colorado had healthy school meals for all as a ballot measure on our 2025 ballot. And so when people selected education, that opened the door for us to have deeper conversations. You care about education. Did you know that ballot measure blah 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 is proposition is on the ballot? And do you need additional information about that in order to vote in an informed way? So using the Why Vote tool has also helped our partners better understand the barriers that their communities face and what's truly at stake for them in the elections. So the question of, what questions do you have about voting in the next election is very practical. And it's been especially powerful in gathering input that informs our voter engagement strategies and the materials that we use about those logistics and practical barriers to voting. As Community Resource Center continues to evolve, we're shifting towards more resource sharing in our connector role. So we are focused on uplifting tools like the Why Vote tool through our trainings, our convenings. We share the tool in our newsletter and on our website. We have a digital resource library. So nonprofits can choose what works best for them and their communities. We're really grateful again to Nonprofit Vote and the Right Questions Institute for this tool. Really aligns with our values and just being authentic in our nonpartisan voter and civic engagement, and has strengthened how our partners connect with voting to like real lived experiences of those that they serve. So I will hand it back to the team and excited to dig into some more Q&A.
Thank you so much, Monica. And before we kind of open it up and do the Q&A, I want to talk kind of concretely about some of the principles, some of the educational principles behind the tool, just very briefly. Okay, so the shift that we really want to emphasize in using the tool is that it is, instead of giving people lots of information about voting at the beginning of a conversation, you're giving them or presenting them with just a small amount of information to keep people's focus. And instead of telling them that they should vote or trying to convince them to do so, we're allowing them to get to their own conclusion about why they should vote. And I think this piece starts to address some of the questions that people had in the chat of, people's fear of engaging with institutions is legitimate. And there's a lot of history that people have about, systems that they're facing and systems that they've had to navigate. And I think this allows people to find their own motivation or not and sees what might be the importance to them of voting and allows them to ask questions so that they can navigate that fear of engaging with institutions. So it's not going to solve those larger systemic issues, but it is a way to engage people where they are taking up the space and taking up the space with their questions and their thoughts about voting. So the final shift is, instead of deciding what information people need, you're allowing people to set the agenda about what they want to know based on their questions. And of course, that doesn't mean that you'll never provide information that you know they should know, and maybe they don't know that they should know, but it is instead first starting with where are they and what questions do they have? And just some very quick teaching tips for using the tool. These are recommendations. If possible, we recommend that you lead people through a step-by-step process. There's different ways to do that. You can do it conversationally, you can do it using this template, but as opposed to asking people to lead themselves through the process, we found it's much more successful or if it becomes a conversation. One rule, one thing that we say is actually pretty important is when you are presenting this to them, you are not telling them what they should be thinking, doing, or asking. You're not giving examples of questions. You're not saying, "Oh, I'm going to answer this for you because I hear a silence." You're really trying to give people the space to do that thinking for themselves. And if you are going to give information related to voting, which many of us are, do it after guiding people through the steps of the process. And then, of course, we encourage you all to customize it and build it into your work. So just to go back to some of the examples I referenced at the beginning, we had somebody who adapted this tool and used it for the census. So essentially saying these services that people receive or decisions that elected officials made are connected to the census. And so why might you want to participate in the census was an adaptation that a librarian made in New York. And I think I mentioned this earlier, but it's been adapted for local elections. So there's the Cincinnati City Council race and the Georgia special Senate election. There were issues that people added and more specific information that people added to individual elections. I also saw a bunch of things in the chat, and forgive me, I'm unable to respond to people directly in this format, but I saw, folks asking, is it available as an app? Are there other languages? Are there digital copies? Do you use it in group or individual settings? And I just want to end by saying we have a lot of different resources at this link, which we'll send out afterwards as well, rightquestion.org/why vote. And there's things like a facilitation guide, a video walkthrough, there's slides for group presentations. We have copies of the Why Vote tool in Spanish. We don't currently have other languages, but if any of you end up translating the tools into other languages, please share them with us and we can make them available for even more folks. We also have a lesson plan for high school students. But I want to leave plenty of time for a question and answer and hear more of your ideas in the chat. So just thank you all for participating and I'll pass it back to Gwen.
Thank you so much, Naomi. Just like round of applause. This is all so relevant, so helpful, so useful. I could just see from the activity in the chat and the conversation that I think folks are really going to walk away with a really useful tool, which is amazing. We do have a few questions in the chat. I'm going to try to combine a couple of these that are very similar, and then you actually addressed a couple of them. We will not get to all the questions, but we will do our best. And what we actually might do is take some of the questions and we'll have Naomi answer them on the back end, and then we'll send those out with the follow-up email that you all will receive. So thank you so much. These are really great questions. Just to just put a fine point on the question you just answered, but some context here. So someone asked about if the template comes in other languages, which you answered, but access to this tool and is this an open source tool that folks can use and adapt in whatever way that they want, or do they need to credit you? Yeah, there we go. Yeah.
The slide up for longer, that's what you're saying? Yes. Great. Thanks, Gwen. Yes, so as long as people are crediting the Right Question Institute as the creator of the Why Vote tool or adaptations, you can adapt it, you can make it your own. You can put source www.rightquestion.org as long as you're using it for non-commercial purposes. And where you access it, it lives, the version that I showed you today lives on the Nonprofit Vote website. And the link that I put up in the past slide is for further resources on the Why Vote tool. So it's different iterations of it, the Why Vote tool, lesson plan, and facilitation guide. So you can either go to the Nonprofit Vote website if you just want to download the templates, and they'll also link to that page with further resources.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you. Thank you. There were a couple of questions around just context and where to use these tools. So a lot of times folks are tabling, they're having really quick conversations. Is there a way to adapt this tool to the quicker conversations, or are there other settings where you've seen this adapted? And maybe Monica, you can speak to this as well. I know you all were using this with laminated. I even saw folks in the chat saying that they used it in that way. Can you just tell us a little bit if there's ways that it can be adapted for those shorter form conversations?
Yeah, I think just thinking about it creatively, it can be as simple as a visual that folks can take with them to keep thinking about later, the postcard, especially when it's like a physical activity that you've done and maybe you want to hold on to it and you put it on your refrigerator or it sits in your car in your purse for a while. And then it can be as deep as like sitting and filling out the backside, with the Q&A together. So I think that it doesn't have to just be one thing.
I love that. And I really love the kind of poster board and the stickers idea that you all, obviously you're supportive of creativity here, and folks figuring out what works for them. And I'll just echo what Naomi said about please share those examples with us. Send them to us. We will share them with Right Question Institute and with CRC and vice versa. We really want to share examples of this working really well. Got another question here. Somebody said, how do we respond to a dismissive, I'm not interested in politics? This is a question we get a lot. I think other parts of this, if I can just combine a couple questions, they said, how do we respond to someone who says we don't have any good candidates as well? Any ways you would respond to that?
Yeah, that's really tough. I think this tool is in part designed to help get over the bump of people saying I politics is in this box for me and I don't want to touch what's in the box, because it allows people to start with things that actually do touch their lives. So whether that's services that they rely on, whether that's issues that they care about, things in their neighborhood, it starts there. It starts where people are, and it's helping them make the connections between that and what they might think of as politics without using the word politics or civics or civic duty or any of those words that we sometimes use in the voter engagement space. And because it's asking them, you know, they might have a lot of reasons for not engaging in voting. So you're just asking them to also think about what are some reasons you might want to vote, and having them do that thinking and articulate that, it begins to maybe crack that kind of resistance a little bit. But it's not a panacea, it won't solve all problems, and it's not going to necessarily engage all people. The goal is to get to people who might be willing to think differently, and who, by starting to do that thinking and formulating questions, becomes more motivated to find more information, or at least to engage further than they have been in the past.
I love that. And one of the things I love about this tool so much is that it is not prescriptive. It is not motivational. The goal is not, to talk at someone. It is to really build that curiosity. Yeah, that's one of the reasons we really love this tool and your approach. I think one of the questions here that's related to that is, how does this tool address privilege difference between voters and the person using the tool? I know often it is organizations that are working with folks who might be unhoused, folks who might be, struggling for whatever reason. And so how do you address that difference in privilege using this tool? Can you I'll speak to that at all.
Yeah, and Monica, you might have some thoughts on this as well.
Yes.
I guess my perspective is, the privilege difference exists, and so like we just have to acknowledge that. I think the philosophy here is this is centering what people are naming as important to them and what they see as the value and what questions they have, and that can start to kind of, you know, even the playing field of maybe the power differential that people feel when somebody is coming along and telling them, well, you should vote because XYZ, and I know it's important for you. And it's instead almost sharing power in the sense that you're inviting their questions. So instead of me asking you questions and forcing you to respond to my questions about voting, why wouldn't, like why are you not voting? Have you registered? All of those questions. It's actually sharing that power and saying, well, what questions do you have for me? And so I don't think there's a way that we can completely address that privilege difference. It exists. And so how can we do our best to do that? It's, I think, by starting where people are and centering their experience and their voice. But Monica, you might also have thoughts about this in your practice.
Yeah, one example I've heard from one of our amazing organizers in response, this is to the previous question, but it ties. The previous question about like, what if people are just, I'm not interested in voting. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't count. Um, is responding with like, it sounds like you're not feeling heard. Like it sounds like you don't feel like your voice is being heard. So what are some other examples of civic engagement, taking a step back? Okay, voting doesn't feel like the right way to make your voice heard. What are some other ways? Is it showing up at city council meetings? Let me help you get the schedule. And if you need help with transportation, is it like even within the nonprofit, like are there collaborative meetings and are there, places that you can come and speak up and feel like your voice is heard in other ways? And oftentimes that seems to then like lead that person back to being like, it all leads back to voting. It all leads back to like who my elected officials are and how that, impacts the greater system of what I live in, whether it's at the local, state, national level. And so sometimes it's zooming out and just realizing it's people want to feel heard. And I think the why vote tool is about voting, but I think it can lead to some of those bigger conversations about you know how do you engage in your community in general.
Absolutely. It's this one little moment, right? You like make this little decision, you go in, you touch a screen and check a box, or you fill something out and put it in the mail, or however, you vote in your state. But there's a lot that leads to that decision. And then there's a lot that can happen afterwards. So I'm so glad that you mentioned that, actually showing up. Who did I vote for city council? Oh, what are they doing? What did they vote for? Wait a minute, and being engaged like that. Thank you all so much. We could go through these questions just for many, many more hours, but I want to respect folks' time. Please do take a moment to fill out the survey. You'll get this survey at the end of the webinar. It will pop up on your screen. You just fill it out real quick, 6 easy little questions, and send that back to us. We really do read them, and it helps us evaluate our work and plan for the future. One of the reasons we have this webinar today is because we got a lot of responses and requests for this topic. And then our call to action is really the first one is to use this tool. Check out this tool. It is on our website in our resource library. We have a whole bunch of resources there. And then that also links to the Right Question Institute as well. So please do check those out, use them, start planning. It is a midterms year. There are lots of elections that are on the table. There are primaries that are happening as soon as this month. and throughout the year. So please do pay attention to that. You can go ahead and start your planning process early. Will be really helpful. And then I also just wanted to lift up our bite-sized democracy challenge from our newsletter. Step 1 is to mark November 3rd, 2026. That is going to be one of the election days, one of the main election days of the year, though there are primaries earlier. Look up your state's voter registration or primary deadline. Check out your Secretary of State's or your election office for that, and then snap a photo of it, snap a screenshot, send it to Caroline on our team. You might get featured in our newsletter somewhere, and you'll definitely get some bonus points, brownie points from there as well. And just wanted to, again, thank you so much, Naomi and Kayla and Monica, and then Sugalema from our team, who is also our stage manager for the day. This has been such a pleasure, and you all are such gems in this movement, and we're so grateful for you bringing your expertise to the table today. Thank you all so much. And please do stay in touch. Our next webinar, you'll get information about that. We're going to talk about staying nonpartisan, bringing in one of our attorney friends. So please do stay tuned for that next one. And thank you all so much. Have a great rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone.